Chris Graham and Ray Petrie. We're going to talk some AEW wrestling. Ray reviews Dynamite's the pay-per-views, previews, and reviews pay-per-views for us here at AFP. Has been doing a good job of that for the last few months. So let's start there. Let's review this week's Dynamite, Ray, as we're heading into Grand Slam next week, a banger of a show it looks like coming up next week in New York. How do you think overall this week's show did in terms of getting us ready for next week?
I don't think it really prepared us for next week. They've done the bulk of that in the last, well, I guess last week.
Yeah.
This show was the matches were good. The segments were hit or miss. I think it was, you could have skipped this episode and still got the gist of what's going to happen next week. Um, Jericho and Orange Cassidy. I don't really know what we're doing here. I don't understand the point. I don't understand how this benefits either wrestler or either faction, the conglomeration or the learning tree. Um, what did you think about that match? It was 20 minutes.
I had the same opinion. Having read your column, I had this a same or similar opinion as you did when they first came out. Why are we starting the show with this match? These guys can be ratings killers. I know Orange Cassidy's been a favorite of Tony Khan's for a few years, and Chris Jericho used to be the demo god. I've got the numbers from WrestleNomics pulled up here. Uh, the Jericho Cassidy match started the show, the first quarter hour averaged 782,000. Uh, the next they did continue into the second quarter hour, as you mentioned, for a few minutes. The second quarter hour went to 724, the third went to 682, so we quickly lost audience. We've seen this so many times. They're referencing a feud from 3+ years ago, back during the pandemic when we were, the orange juice and the jacket and all that silly stuff. Um, that feud played out while we did not have fans largely in arenas, and so I guess you couldn't get a gauge for how fans reacted to it. I don't think they're reacting to it now. So yes, and then starting a show with this, I watch Dynamite's most weeks with a good friend who's a big wrestling fan, and our comment was they could have done this match on Rampage, and no one would have bothered to care either way.
The crowd seemed to enjoy Jericho, which just only added to the defeating the purpose here. You the heel is getting cheered more than the babyface. It was odd. It was perplexing. And like you said, obviously they lost a lot of viewers going into that third quarter hour, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, but I wonder if you compare shows that open with segments like an MJF segment or, whoever it may be, compared to a match with Orange Cassidy. I wonder what the drop off looks like.
Yeah, and I need to let's see the trying to get a sense. The one thing that WrestleNomics does a good job of generally, the last 80 days trend, um, it looks like it starts a little higher. He doesn't have numbers here. Brandon Thurston doesn't have the exact numbers here, but the show. This is a problem for the show in general. Is that uh, over the 2 hours, the viewers are lost. And I do track this with just look. I don't watch a lot of WWE content, but I do track the numbers. Over a 3 hour Raw, which now they're going to 2 hours for the next few months before the move to Netflix, and then we'll see what happens with Netflix. The third hour of Raw is a big ratings killer because it's just hard to stay for 3 hours every Monday night. But for the first 2 hours, they stay pretty consistent. SmackDown certainly stays pretty consistent for its 2 hours, but Dynamite always loses. A lot of viewers. This one went from 782 for the first quarter hour to 637 for the final quarter hour, and even lower for the overrun, 627. Um, that's a reflection of fans, I think, wanting to tune in. We want to see in the first 15 minutes, we want to see who's going to be there. AEW had been starting a lot of shows off lately with a rundown. Here's what you can look forward to on the show. This week we just got a match, and we didn't get a feel for what the rest of the show is going to be. But we'll tune in for that first quarter hour. We might stick around for other stuff as it comes up. I don't think this show, starting with a match, gave us the opportunity to say, "Hey, we need to be here for this whole show." In fact, I have two TVs playing, and I had a baseball game on one and this on the other, and I was paying more attention to the baseball game as this show went on.
I grew up in the era of Raw where you open with a cold open
Yeah.
and you set up the main event later that night, and you get to establish what's going on in the episode. And maybe I've been too overly informed by that, but I think that's a good formula. But that then again, maybe if it were a different match, people would have stayed tuned in. I don't know. It's really tough to say. I don't do as good of a job at tracking the quarter hours as I should. But uh, yeah, this was not. I don't think this was a great way to open the show. So
I think, yeah, I mean, and as we wrap this part of it up, start a show with give us a hint of the stars that are going to be on the show would be a way to do it. You can do a match if you want to a couple minutes in, but later in the show we're going to have Swerve Strickland. We're going to hear from MJF, etc. Bryan Danielson is going to address whatever he's going to address. Um, AEW is great with matches, not so great with stories at all. And the layout of the show 5 years in, we're almost exactly 5 years in, is still a question. So that's a bit frustrating, to say the least.